I actually didn't come out with my faith intact. I came out with a different faith because I went in with atheism. That was my faith.
Really?
Going into Yale. Oh, yes. I
How,
was a little precocious as a kid. So I had my teenage atheist rebellion a little early. Basically, by the time I was confirmed in the Catholic Church at age 13, I would have described myself as an atheist. This was during that period of time where there was that very popular publishing movement, the New Atheists, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris. And for a 13-year-old, their arguments are fairly compelling. I don't think their arguments are very compelling for anyone who thinks with greater depth than a 13-year-old, but 13 is right about the age. And also because their frivolous arguments appeal to the intellectual hubris of a 13-year-old and the intellectual depth. So I had this atheism or agnosticism or some vacillation between the two, and I get to Yale, and everybody there is an atheist. Very smart people, generally speaking, some extraordinarily smart people. Most people are atheists or agnostic, except for the smartest people. And this is why I'm skeptical of these statistics. You know, there are lies, damned lies in statistics. Because one thing I noticed at Yale is that the very smartest people were Christian. Maybe some Orthodox Jews as well. And I noticed a lot of them were even leaning toward Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, these really long-standing Christian traditions, what seemed to me at the time the least defensible of the Christian traditions from my rationalist and atheistic standpoint. And so I thought that was a little curious. You're at this place, all these very smart people, they're all atheists, and yet the creme de la creme were Christian specifically. And so I kind of thought about that for a little bit. And one thing that brought me back to the faith during my time in college was the modal ontological argument for God, the formulation of St. Anselm of Canterbury's argument done by Alvin Plantinga, that Calvinist philosopher at Notre Dame. And so that got me thinking, because that argument, which convinces virtually nobody, started to convince me. The argument being, it's not impossible that God exists, therefore God exists. I skipped a couple steps, but that's basically the argument. And I found the argument so whimsical, and I was really compelled by it. And then I started exploring other arguments, the Thomistic arguments for God, the cosmological argument, all of the very popular arguments for God. At that point, a missionary, he gave me a copy of C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. I started to devour Lewis. I would read Chesterton. I would read Owen Barfield, Hilaire Belloc, that whole group of thinkers, the Inkling type people. And I started to understand this profound intellectual tradition. And I realized there weren't really any arguments for atheism. The closest argument for atheism was the problem of pain and evil and suffering. And really, when you ran through that one, that became an argument for God too. It was at this point, and really only at this point, that I would say that I had a real sense of the numinous or of the religious experience. And all of that was happening during college, but it was really about 23 years old or after college that all of that hit, those coincidences, that providence, really all coalesced together and gave me, I guess the way you would describe it is that things happen slowly and then all at once. And then they happened slowly, and then they happened all at once at about 23. But I think it was my experience in college, surrounded by atheism, that really pushed me further down that path and faster down that path. You know, when you're in an environment where you have to constantly challenge beliefs, you think, all of these people, I think they're not quite right, but why? I have a contrarian sort of disposition. Why are they wrong? I can't quite tell. It really deepens your belief and your thought, and ultimately, in my case at least, led me to faith.